So, 7 o'clock, I'll call to order the meeting of the Board of Civil Authority. We have 4 members out here, everyone here, and myself. And on the agenda tonight, we just have the one question, which is, shall the Board of Civil Authority designate 73 Charles Avenue, Middlebury Union High School Auditorium as the location for the annual town meeting to be held annually the Monday evening prior to the first Tuesday of March. So I would entertain a motion on that. A second?
Margaret.
Okay, discussion. So I would just, so I would just put out that currently the idea to go back to the high school and do it again there this year was really kind of put forward, I believe, by the staff. I think Kathleen Ramsey as manager and her assistant, oh, this is on, okay, and her assistant. Town manager Chris English did a really good job in, I think, asking the staff about how the different aspects of setting up for town meeting went and what problems they had and what we could run into, and asked people to come up with ideas. And certainly Mary Hogan School and MUHS were on the list, and I think we came up with some ideas that just immediately got kind of nixed. And then the CVUS church sanctuary was considered, and Chris and I visited that together, and that was going to be a non-starter. So what I would like to do is, I was sort of proposing that this came before the Selectboard in terms of getting their support, and they were on board at the time. I believe Laura was not at that meeting, so I won't speak for you, certainly. And so I'm putting forth that we set it as the place that we meet annually, and so we don't have to meet every year, and we don't have to discuss this unless something comes up that we want to change it. And if we want to change it, the BCA can meet at any time to do that. So that's why I'm putting it forward this way, and I wonder if anybody has any questions, or Laura.
The only thing I wondered is if we wanted to keep it Middlebury Union High School and not designate whether it's the auditorium or the gym in the event that there's some reason we might want to use the gym.
Okay.
I don't know that it matters, but, and I know that people prefer the comfort of the cushioned seats in the auditorium. And I know that we can overcome the obstacles that we had the last time with microphones being passed to people. So I think it'll work in the auditorium, and I could see that we would be there, but that would be the only considerations, just so you don't have to go back to the drawing board.
Okay, so what you're saying is, in terms of designating the place, as long as we designate the high school, it can be the auditorium. If for any reason it couldn't be. So would you like to make an amendment to the motion?
Selectboard now? No, we're all still.
It's all,
Yeah, I just wanted to pass a comment about Laura's thing. The only thing I would have a concern about, I think, maybe in the gymnasium is the acoustics.
Okay.
You may get a loud reverberation, and the auditorium is set up to accommodate that kind of possibility.
okay. So in case anyone couldn't hear that, Margaret is pointing out that if we did have it in the gymnasium at the high school, the acoustics could be poor, and so maybe we wouldn't want to do that.
So I'm not going to make an amendment. I would keep it as it is, because as you said, we could always change it if we needed to, for
Yes,
some
the
reason.
Board of Civil Authority can come together at any time to designate a change in venue. So, but if we set it as an annual, we don't have to do that. So, okay.
Make a motion, we do that? That we have.
We already have a motion on the floor, and it's all under discussion, so, yeah. Sorry.
Is a comment, just a comment in order, and that is the auditorium is fine. It's made to have the acoustics come out and not go the other way. So the use of microphones and passing them around and making sure that there are plenty of them so that things can be heard is pretty critical.
Absolutely, yep. Any other discussion? You ready for the question? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. It looks like we can adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, Heather, second?
Seconded.
Who's that? Brian? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm assuming none opposed. Okay. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Ann.
Thank you all.
All right, so we just had the Board of Civil Authority, and now I will call the regular Select Board meeting of Tuesday, January 22nd to order. And the first item is to approve the agenda.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Are there any changes or amendments? Hearing none. All in favor of approving the agenda as submitted, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, next is to approve the minutes of our January 15th regular business meeting. Moved? Moved and seconded? Okay, are there any amendments to those meetings? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of approving the business meeting minutes as drafted, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And we have one
Abstain.
abstention. Next is citizen comments. Is there anyone here for something that's not on the agenda? Okay, we're going to move on. The next item is a request for proclamation as Chang Young Ray Day from Alan Lay. Alan, if you'd like to, if you could come up to the mic, please.
Sorry, never done this before.
It's all right?
That's okay, we don't.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was just wondering if you guys could designate March 1st, 2019 as Chang Young Rhee Day in the town of Middlebury. Chang Young Rhee is the director of the Asia Pacific Department of the IMF, and he's going to be speaking about the trade war and about new challenges facing the world, and Asia in particular, in the foreseeable future. I mean, I think we all know what's going on in the news right now and just the uncertainty of everything. So hopefully this will be open to the public and to anyone who wants to come, but it'll be held at the college and everyone's welcome to join. And I would just like to give Middlebury people, townspeople, students alike, a firsthand glimpse into what the future holds.
Applaud your bring in a speaker here like that, and the college does that a lot of times, and I applaud your reaching out to us. Might I ask where this came from?
Yeah, he's actually a Middlebury parent.
A Middlebury parent?
Yeah.
Okay. Just so the board knows, this has been kind of unusual for in my tenure. We'd never had something like this, and so I was looking as to the proper way to handle it. I reached out to the college to see if they had an official position, and they never responded. I don't think they have an official position because they oftentimes have dignitaries come and speak, and we hadn't received a request like this before. So then I also reached out. I knew a former professor who's on our board wasn't going to be able to be here tonight, and I reached out to Victor to see, because he's been on the board much longer than I have.
Oh,
He's
Hector
been around
Villa?
the town a lot longer and involved with the college. And let me just read the board what he said. I note that the request is not an official request from the college, but from a college student who is not unjustly admire Mr. Ray, seems to be a figure of some international prominence. But the college has many of these regularly visiting Middlebury as speakers, and there is nothing that sets him apart from the rest of them. And so Victor doesn't feel there's a compelling reason to make his visit an occasion for the town to declare a special day, which is part of what the precedent that I was looking as to, how do we set a precedent on this? I have in some of my prior experience, we do that, the State House does certain things, but it's usually sponsored by someone, and it has there is a selection criteria as to what it what it requires, and so I don't know what maybe we could, there was be something less than, but to declare up a special town, you know, a day in Middlebury, probably ought to have some sort of a policy or something, some sort of a study before we start creating that, and so just my opinion, and so I'll open it up to the board. That's kind of a little bit of the research that I did, because it's a great thing, and I really applaud you, and it is customary in some areas, but we have not done that previously here in Middlebury, and so I was looking for what, kind of felt that the onus is on me to do a little background, so.
Sorry.
Well, there's no reason to apologize, because while we don't have a policy, and I'm reluctant to do this without such, what you have done is you have brought forward the fact that this gentleman is coming, and he's a member of prominence, and several people watch these hearings that we have, and so it just adds to the publicity, which is a good thing. It's not that there's anything specifically against this gentleman. I concur with what Brian and Victor are saying, and it's something we need to look at, but reluctant to try to make the policy now without thinking about it.
Sorry about
No, but, no, again, don't apologize.
Please don't apologize.
No, don't apologize.
it's
We applaud you bringing it forward. And the fact is, because you've done that, many more of our citizens know that this gentleman is visiting, and hopefully we'll pack the house to hear what he has to say,
Yeah.
because I didn't actually know he was coming, so I'm planning to be there.
Thank you. Yeah, we hope to have a full house.
You're absolutely right, timing is impeccable on what he has to say.
So is there something that we can do that's, you know, can we do something that
Would you
is a
like to
night-
do like a letter of welcome, perhaps?
You know,
To send to,
something that's maybe
to,
not,
um,
to the
other than
extent that-
declaring a day.
right, but something that welcomes him by us and,
I'm thinking not, you know, because again, I think that could set a precedent too, and I don't want that to be another task added to our staff. I think that we've accomplished what we hoped to tonight by having you visit and tell us about the event, and I concur with the statements that have already been made about, you know, being sure that we're clear on our policy for doing proclamations. So I don't have anything else to add to that. I feel good about wishing you well, and we will look forward to the event.
Farhad, thoughts on it?
Henry, I was just going to question you, what's the significance? If we have a proclamation, what do you think that's going to accomplish besides just a proclamation?
Yeah, I was hoping to spread publicity about the event, just because it is a Friday afternoon, and I mean, most Middlebury students, like in case they don't have the time or the energy to do it in like negative 30-degree weather, that we could maybe spread it around town or something, just to.
So you got that opportunity, we did that now.
The what?
I think we did that now by talking
You
about
actually
it,
did
right?
accomplish that quite well,
Yeah.
actually.
And I was just hoping that, like, he's not receiving an honorarium or anything, so we were hoping to, like, kind of give him, like, oh, like, we recognize your contributions to the school, without actually, because most speakers at the college, they get a pretty hefty honorarium, but because he works at the IMF, he's not allowed to, but I was hoping to recognize him in some manner for his time and contributions to the college and to the town.
have you reached out to the Addison Independent about maybe doing an article to further promote the event?
Not yet.
Okay, that may
That
be
would be-
something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You want good publicity, that's the way to do it.
yeah.
And
That
so
might be a great way to, you know, let more of the community and sort of the outside of Middlebury know that it's happening too.
Okay, yeah.
And just for the listening audience, the correct date is March 1st, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and we'll be speaking up at the college at what forum?
At what?
Where at the college? is
Oh,
it?
at the Raj, at the Rowton Center for Global Affairs, in the
Okay.
conference room.
At 4:30,
Yeah.
okay. Any other possibilities? I don't know, we do have a community events calendar that's posted. I don't know if that can be submitted as a community event, so. Well, thank you very much for bringing this forward.
Okay.
Did a good job.
Okay, okay, so is there?
So I think the consensus of the board is that this is something that we cannot support at this time and without having an existing policy and a standard to judge by. That said, our policy committee is an ad hoc committee, and it's not something that could be done in time for this event.
Okay.
But it's something that will probably go on to our long list of policies that need review.
Okay.
And so you brought that forward.
Okay, so not right now, but maybe
Future speakers.
April or whatever.
I do think that the college it should probably go through the college leadership first, and that they have some sense of what's appropriate, so that they're screening and treating theirs at some level of who they want to give a proclamation to and who they may want to give something else to. So I think that first bringing it up through the college is probably a good process as well.
Oh, yeah. Sorry if I'm just blabbering away. But yeah, we also have the sponsorship of the Department of Economics, Department of Poli-Sci, and Department of International Politics and Economics, if that holds any sway among the select board. Or sorry if I'm rambling.
Perfect.
Yeah, no need to apologize. You did a good job bringing this forward. You gave it actually good publicity by being here. Heather's suggestion for that as an independent is a good way to go. And it also brings up, this is not the first issue we've ever had where we reluctantly held back on approving it because we don't have a policy, but you have to recognize that fairness and standardization is something that we do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you guys? Sorry if I'm going on and on, but do you guys know when you'll have a policy in place, or if you guys?
I can't commit to that, Alan.
Okay. Okay. Sorry.
We do have a process where we prioritize in the staff time. And so this will go into basically go into the bucket of things to be discussed. We have a process, you can look it up on our website, and there are things that are sitting in that bucket that haven't been acted upon yet because of shortage of staff time.
Okay.
We have some pretty significant projects going on, but it's worthy of at least making it to the discussion round.
Okay. All right. No worries. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you for coming.
Thank you much.
Next is award of contract for construction inspection services for Pulp Mill Bridge, Seymour Street sidewalk. And,
So, as you know, the Seymour Street Pulp Mill Bridge sidewalk project is going forward this summer as part of the Vermont Agency of Transportation funding requirements. We need to have a construction inspector on site. We issued a request for proposals and received 5 responses, ranging in cost from about $41,000 to $82,000. 2 competitors were right at the $41,000 and $42,000 level. Adam Luigi, our project manager from the Regional Planning Commission, and Chris Hunt, the Vermont Agency of Transportation project manager, and I reviewed all of the responses and met last Friday to score the responses and have a recommendation to you based on recommendations for the firms, references for the firms, of awarding the contract to Dubois and King.
Kathleen, how does that compare to what we had expected in the budget?
We are still under budget.
We're still under
overall.
budget? Excuse me. Okay, great.
And that amount again, Kathleen, for their services?
It's $42,000.
That's the lowest.
Yep. Yep.
So I'll make a motion to award the contract to Dubois and King for construction inspection services for Seymour Street Pulp Mill Bridge Road Sidewalk project at a total cost of 42,000?
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any questions and comments? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Leslie is here to discuss a submission of caring for the canopy grant application. And we'll let, I think Chris is probably here with her. Are you, or over this? So, we'll let you tell us what you got.
Yeah, the Vermont Urban and Community Forestry Program is offering, every year, except last year, offer a Caring for Canopy grant. This year, the theme is EAB, Emerald Ash Borer. So it's to help communities who haven't made a plan, which we have, or to do an inventory or to do tree replacement of ashes taken down. Our plan proposes to plant 2 trees for every ash tree coming down. We've now removed 12 trees because they were in poor or fair condition. So this grant is asking for funds to buy 7 to 8 trees and plant them. It's a matching grant, so we're asking for $2,000, and we propose to do in-kind volunteer services or town services for almost the same amount. The tree committee would do the planting, and that's about it.
Okay. Any questions? Hearing none. Pleasure of the board.
I'll move it, that we submit an Emerald Ash Borer municipal grant application for $4,150,
Second.
Including an in-kind?
including an in-kind match of $2,115.
Okay. Moved and seconded by Farhad? Okay. Any final questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, thank you.
That's great. I just want to say that the state is not encouraging people to cut their ash trees down. And at the moment, they want to see how fast the emerald ash borer spreads. And also, one of the reasons is so that if there is a lone tree somewhere in the United States and it's in Vermont, they're just saying, hold off on healthy trees till further notice.
Okay,
It's good to know.
thank you.
Brian, before we move on, could we just briefly go back to the Du Bois and King project award? So that's $41,208.
So would you like
Need
me to
a
remake the
amendment?
motion?
Yes, please.
So, do we need to do anything to rescind the other one, or just redo it? Doesn't matter.
Could we go back and amend it?
Amendment.
You want me to amend it? So I'll amend my motion to make the total cost $41,200?
208.
208, sorry. 208.
Second?
Okay, moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, we just saved $800, it's okay.
That was worth an amendment. Okay, next is acceptance of a Lyndale Mobile Home Park Community Septic Planning Grant and agreement with the Vermont Agency of Commerce and Community Development and approval of the sub-grant agreement for administration of the project with the Addison County Community Trust. Kathleen, are you familiar with this one? It's been a while, and I...
Yeah. So as you remember, a year or two ago, we applied for $30,000 as a planning grant, with our cash match being $7,500, which we have revolving loan funds that we were going to tap for our cash match.
That's what we were getting, okay. I couldn't remember.
So Town Attorney Benj Putnam has reviewed both the grant agreement and the sub-grant agreement, and is comfortable with them. We are working out some details on the sub-grant agreement, so if your motion could reflect that we're still pending sign-off by legal counsel on the sub-grant agreement.
Okay, so there's three things. Are there any questions of Kathleen on this? One of the things that I know in the pre-meeting chatter here, we were talking about the $7,500 match, and that she just reminded me where that's coming from, the revolving loan
It's
fund.
been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while, so I couldn't remember.
So maybe for everyone, just a quick refresher, this is coming, this loan is coming from the Vermont Community Development Program. It's going to be passed through the town's books. We handle the accounting, but it is going to be administered by the Addison County Community Trust. They're going to be contracting for the work and seeing the work done.
So I'll make a motion to authorize Town Manager Kathleen Ramsey to sign the grant agreement for the Lyndale Mobile Home Park Community Septic Planning Project.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
I'll further move that the Select Board sign the grant agreement resolution for the Lyndale Mobile Home Park Community Septic Planning Project.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
And then pending final approval by council, authorize Town Manager Kathleen Ramsey to sign the sub-grant and administrative services program management agreement with the Addison County Community Trust for the Lyndale Mobile Home Park Community Septic Planning Project.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions on that one? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? And I'll just kind of point out something on this one because it's going to come up as further discussion as we move forward, and it's something that in our personnel committee we talked a little bit about is the amount of grants like this that we get and we approve, and even if we don't have money coming out of the general fund, we do have time coming out of our staff, and we will be talking later about appropriate, maybe a fee for managing some of these, because they do add up and they become time consuming in the administrative detail and billing and requests for payment that happen. So next item, number 9, is a letter of support for the application to the Better Connections Program for funding of the downtown master planning. And with that, Jen,
Don't know if you have any questions. I'm just here to answer questions at this point.
any questions? Everybody get a chance to read the draft letter?
It's good. I'm glad to see the support, letters of support that have been received. So there's a lot of commitment to downtown master planning.
My question is then, when we get this money on March 15th, are you already now preparing the schedule so we can hit the ground running with it?
Yeah, we have to do RFP procurement first. And then, if we get the grant, we're
we get this
speaking very
grant.
optimistically. We'd have to procure the consultant first, and then there's a schedule in the grant application of how things progress. So, yeah, right now the schedule has us doing like sort of a pre-outreach through the spring and into the summer, kind of promoting a series of events that would occur in September and October when people are kind of back from school and their vacation schedules are over. But there would be some outreach events that occurred during the summer to get people excited about it. Maybe an art contest, a little survey, something like that, some initial meetings. But we'd have the actual design charrettes in September and October. And then the consultant from there would be able to confer with the project team and the select board to make revisions to the report into December, so that we should be able to be done with it by January of 2020. So that way you'd have recommendations to use as the real project is drawing to a close.
The only question I had was, do you feel like this letter is strong enough, or do you think just because it's coming from the select board, the fact that there's a letter from the select board shows the needed support?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's enough. If there's anything you want to add, we could always make a change now. We have so many other letters of support that hit on the other
You
points.
have been getting a lot of them. Did you get
Uh-huh.
one from the college yet?
We did.
Yes.
You did, okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
Okay.
Yep, so I
Well-
think the
There's
important thing for the,
16 pages of,
yeah, 16
What-
letters, so.
yeah.
Well, maybe that's enough detail then. You do tie in that it's, timely with what's going on, and that it's appropriate that we get going on a plan as to what the next, what the downtown's gonna look like after everything gets done, so.
Mhm. And Jim's letter talks about the rail project a little bit, so that ties it in nicely.
Yeah.
I have a draft of the grant application done, and I sent it to the funding agency for a pre-review. They're willing to review it before we actually submit it, so I'll be hearing from them if there's ways to strengthen it.
Okay, okay.
Brian, I'm just curious how we got to the point of writing a letter of support, because I assume that since we're submitting it, that reflects our support. And I'm just thinking, again, in terms of precedent for staff, you know, is that our protocol to write letters of support for grants?
We did that last year for this grant.
Oh, we did,
Yeah,
okay.
we've,
All
this
right.
is something we really
I guess I
want to
forgot
see
that.
happen. It's one of our
Okay.
priorities that we've,
Oh.
said, so.
No, then if that's so, then maybe that becomes just a standard for
Yeah,
other grants that we apply for, I guess.
I feel like this grant is different because it's gonna,
Mhm.
because you're sponsoring and administering it with your staff,
Mhm.
like, you know, I would manage it. And then it's gonna require your engagement as time goes on. They need to know that you're willing to be involved in implementing what happens with the grant. That was some feedback that we got. So your letter of support sort of strengthens that implementation argument.
okay.
Okay, I don't have anything else.
All right, pleasure of the board.
I'll make a motion to sign the select board letter of support for the Better Connections grant application for the downtown master plan.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any final comments?
No, let's do this.
All right.
Fingers
All,
crossed.
all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Thank you, Jen. Okay, next is a report on the Personnel Committee meeting of January 21st, which was in regards to a request for a new full-time grants administration accounting position. And, excuse me. Laura chaired that committee meeting, and you want to walk us through it, Laura? Or you?
Although I know Kathleen knows the details too, so this would improve the administration of basically the grants funds that we've been talking about and provide for a better segregation of duties in the accounting office. And that's been pointed out to us in our audits, so the Personnel Committee supported the proposal and brings it to you tonight. It's a 30-hour-a-week position with benefits, as you can see, and we think it's a good addition to propose.
Are we doing 30 or 25?
30 was
So
what,
it's a point
was
seven.
what, so that there's two levels here, just so we are clear. So the Personnel Committee approved a request for 30-hour, feeling that the position is warranted. Between the audit reports, the need for segregation of duties, and the growing level of work in regards to grant management and oversight, among other things, and that the workload is and comparables with other townships of similar townships. We looked at City of Montpelier, which has some similarities to Middlebury population and busy hub for the county. That said, this is separate from then when we get to the budgeting discussion as to can we fund it? So this would be more of, I think, a position in principle, and then we have to go through the budget and see where we sit on the budget. It's kind of the way I would see that. Is that correct, Kathleen? Yeah.
I did find the comparison to Montpelier interesting. I don't know if you had a chance to look at their organizational chart, but they have 4
Yeah.
staff members in their finance office, and an IT person, and an HR person. And in fact, we talked a little bit about that, just to see if there are other staff needs that could be coming up. And we're just watchful of that, as things shake out. So it was just a good experience in looking at another model of how staffing is done in a comparable city, town. I think at the very least, this seems like an important position to add. So that's all.
Comments, questions?
Hard to argue against it.
So,
Ready for the motion?
please.
Okay. I'll move that we approve funding for a new .75 full-time accounting grants management position in the Accounting Services Office to be included in our FY20 general fund budget proposal for consideration at town meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any final comments?
I'm just gonna ask, is that what it means, .75 means 30 hours?
Yeah.
Okay.
3/4 of 40 hours, yep. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Now we get to the budget, and I think I'm gonna want to pass this to Kathleen, ask you to walk us through it if you could, because you've made some changes and.
Briefly.
That screen, is that on a camera?
Yeah.
The screen, or can we turn
Does
it so?
anyone here have a problem with me?
Jackie can come sit over here with us, and then she can.
How's that?
It's better.
Okay, at your budget public hearing, you asked me to make several changes in the budget. The water and sewer administrative charges were increased for a 3-year phase-in of new water and sewer administrative charges. Increased interest on investments from $30,000 in the original proposal to $60,000. We increased equipment repair services to reflect the cost of the elevator repair contract, increasing the level of service for that. And then we also decided to phase the salt shed cover, which was originally budgeted at $45,000 over 3 years. So I reduced that from $45,000 in the capital budget to $15,000 in this year's capital budget. And I had also suggested that perhaps we should reduce the benefits that we allocated for the 2 new positions on line 1076 from $50,000 to from $53,000 to $46,000 to reflect what a 2-person health insurance plan would cost rather than a family plan. So those are the changes I made. And then also in discussion, you asked me to come back with some possibilities. Why don't we take a look at the tax rate before we go into the possibilities for reducing it? So the tax rate estimate, looking at it, increase from the current year total tax rate of 98.36 cents to $1.01, 1.5 cents. an increase of just over 3 cents in the tax rate. At the budget public meeting, Ryan also asked me to take a look at the 5-year tax rate history, which I have now on the screen, showing that the tax rate has been very stable at about 98 cents for the last 4 fiscal years, looking at the largest increase at the FY20 budget based on the current draft. So showing the amount of taxes on a $250,000 home for FY16 at $2,455 for municipal taxes only, and estimated on the current budget at $2,537, an increase of $82, or 3.36% in comparison to the Northeast Consumer Price Index increase from 2015 to 2016 of 5.8%. Okay, with that as a backdrop, we can take a look at some ideas for reducing the budget. I think right here. So the first one would be reducing the grants administrative accounting position to 25 hours a week, which would take it out of the full-time status, so significantly reduce the budget while modestly reviewing the cost, the wages cost. I discussed what would be acceptable for a reduction in the library circulation and adult programs. Rather than reduce it to a part-time position, Dana was more favorable with delaying the implementation of that to January 1, so 6 months into the fiscal year, to reduce the expense by half. So in these 2 other items, the Public Works Operation Equipment Fund Replacement level fund at 0, rather than increasing $5,000 to start to accrue money to pay cash for cars. And the same thing with the Parks and Recreation Fund, level fund at 0. And then there was also some interest in seeing what effect increasing the amount of the Cross Street Bridge Fund used to offset capital spending might be, and so I picked a couple of numbers, increasing from $353,603 to $375,000, which would be a change of $21,397, and that's a tax rate impact of about 1/3 of a cent. Increasing to $400,000 would have a tax impact of 0.6 of a cent.
Refresh me again, what's the surplus in that Cross Street Bridge Fund?
$2 million, $2 million. And what we're looking at, the surplus of local option tax and college funds is about $350,000 to $400,000 per year.
That's a nice graph you did, by the way. I stole that for my meeting tomorrow morning presentation.
So this graph shows the estimated income of $600,000 from the college, and $929,345, which is the 5-year local option tax, average. To note that recently we've been bringing in about $995,000 for the last 2 fiscal years, so that's a conservative estimate over going forward. Also added in this slide the planned maintenance expense, when we have a couple of bumps in FY20 this fiscal year, and then out in FY30. As you may recall, VHB did a full maintenance schedule for us, so I could include that in the projections of what our annual expense would be.
Can you go back two slides there? One more, yeah. So this shows you our, since 2009, the trend on local option tax receipts, and while it flattened out a little bit, it's been a pretty consistent growth curve. So when you look at the projection for the delta, it's going to continue to grow, and if the receipts continue to grow, it'll grow even larger. And I'm going to ask that it may be I guess it's too late for this year, but maybe not. But I think at some point that the local option tax needs to be part of the general fund. I think we need to take it to voters and stop having to do one every year, and actually trust the select board and town manager to do their job and manage the receipts and budget, just like we do on everything else.
I think it as a purpose, part of the general fund, but with a defined purposes, i.e.
I think it should be part of the general fund. We are going to prioritize capital improvements, but we have the water project, and we have coming down the line sewer project. We have constant infrastructure needs, and we have to make those. We have to make those investments, and rather than always taking it to, sometimes some of these things, the bond could be subsidized, and it won't be so painful if you were using that for payment on whatever the town decides to support the water with, as opposed to, you have basically 3 ways to pay for it. You can increase your taxes, you can increase the user fees, or we can use some of what's already an existing local option tax excess receipts. And the one thing that really appeals to me is the local option tax spreads that across the greater, all of the users. And so, as the town, as a hub of a greater community, Middlebury incurs a lot of extra costs, not to mention all of the additional costs of the tax-exempt entities that house themselves within the Middlebury's town limits. And so there's a lot of reasons in my mind why we should make full use of that. I'm not talking drain the fund or anything. I'm talking manage it wisely and use that if we have to bond, rather than increase the taxes to pay for the bond, we use the excess some of that excess to pay for the bond. So for instance, in the water, why couldn't we use some of that excess as well as some increase in use fees? A balance. And, I don't know. I think at some point the voters will weary, and you won't get much turnout to vote if we're going to take every budget item to them. I think we bring them a budget once a year, And this, they can say, we don't want to do that, and that's their time when we bring them a budget. But I think this should be a tool that's at our disposal. And I do not see the local option tax ever going away. I think we owe it to the voters to say, you gotta make a call now. Do you really think it's gonna go away, or does the greater, because that's always the thing. Well, we promised when we started it that when the Cross Street Bridge was paid off. That said, I think that the dialogue needs to change, and we need to bring to the voters for a vote, can we use this, and is this going to stay? You look at South Burlington is taking in significant amount of receipts in their local option tax, and they're using it to stabilize their tax rate.
Yeah, there's no argument about that. And it is, as you point out, it's one way that the Shire Town does get a benefit, because Shire Town's buying at large. You get the short end of the deal, so at least it does spread out the revenue generating across the region. Why I asked the question earlier if it was going to be set for something specific, because I really firm believer this becomes a great opportunity to deal with our capital improvement issues and to make sure that it doesn't get shifted to other purposes. But there's no argument. This is a good value for money. And one of the things we've been hearing is some of these business discussions have been going on of how the town can really help to strengthen its economic stability, is that the things we do best are to provide good public services so that the private sector can then build on that. And good roads, good water. I mean, we know water lines failing don't help us. So to deal with it. So I see where you're going with it. My only issue is to make sure it gets focused toward what we all intended to. Not, we know this board will, but we want to make sure it kind of continues on in the future. I mean, we know our board's committed to it, and I suspect future will be as well, but we want to help to secure that.
So I think that my sense is that the voters do see the benefit of us using the local option tax to stabilize the tax rate, whether it's to offset a capital expense or to go into the general fund. I'm not sure. Well, I'm not sure, how they feel about that. Maybe that's the question, but I think that they see our wisdom in doing that. And I think the tricky part for me is how deep to go into that receipt money.
Yeah.
And so is our philosophy, to always level fund, so is that our goal, when we're doing it? And does that determine the amount? And do the voters want us to do that, always have a level funded budget? I don't know, do we ask that, or do we do it this year and then we see how they respond?
I would be a proponent of not using more than, in 1 year than 1 year generates, but that's just my opinion. I agree, maybe that's something that we could potentially stipulate, and other than, if we use more than we generated in 1 year, that would have to go before the voters. That's
Right,
one way to
that
ensure there's
would
some
be-
controls on it.
That's a good
That's what I was after, something like that. Like, what is the cap for us?
Yeah, no, I'm a firm believer in checks and balances, and so,
Mhm.
maybe that's a way to check the utilization and ensure that it's underneath tighter scrutiny.
So you just came up with the idea of like the 1 year, don't exceed the 1 year,
Just when you're
as an
talking,
example.
that's why,
Yeah.
deliberation helps.
Right, uh-huh.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have used more than 1 year, but I wouldn't have thought of putting that in as part of the
stipulation on it.
control.
If you only use what we make for 1 year, then we still have that 2 million sitting in our account.
If you look forward, we do have years where it would ensure that we would always,
Yeah, we have 2
Mhm.
significant
yeah.
expenses.
It would give you a bank that, it would be up to voters, it would give you excess that it's kind of like having some money in your savings. It gives you something that you could bond against and have some money to help with bond payments or something if we had some major infrastructure need.
Mhm.
So the first schedule is in 2020 for the maintenance, and that's over $1 million.
Oh, no, it's $118,000. So that's the total expense. That's the bond payment plus
Okay.
the plant
That's
maintenance.
not very significant,
No.
Mhm. Mhm.
No, and you see how the bond payment drops off, that's why the delta continues to grow.
Okay. Well, if we're assuming that level, then how do we go back to the assumptions that Kathleen put before us, in terms of making decisions then?
Right.
Let's assume that, just for the purpose of discussion, and see, do we need to,
So that would allow you to use that full 400,000.
Refresh
One
me,
year.
did I see, what was the 900 number? Was it again, that was this year's receipts?
995.
Yeah, $995.
So what if we took it to 1 cent?
Well,
Well, that includes the total receipts, but then you have to take the bond payments and stuff out of that, right?
Right.
That's not the excess.
No, that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the down payment, we have 300 something left, right,
Um,
after the bond.
Well, I think
Yeah, there's between 350 and 400,000 extra, depending on receipts after expenses, correct?
Yep.
So can I back up a little bit?
Yes.
So I'm concerned about only budgeting half a year for like the library circulation, because then the next year you're gonna have the whole amount. And so then what do you do the next year? So I think I would, as far as the new positions go, I would leave them as they were originally proposed
I would too.
and not make Kathleen's suggested changes and see if the voters support it.
these are not Kathleen's suggested
Oh.
changes. These are items for discussion.
Okay.
Well, that's what she meant to say. That's
I'll
how I
clarify.
interpret it.
This suggested items for discussion, I guess I would be in favor of leaving them at the current proposal and not reducing them. And then it's gotta go before the voters, and they have to approve it, and they could choose not to, in which case at that time, we could reevaluate. But I guess I'm feeling like I would like to propose, the full, what was originally proposed, so.
Uh-huh. So what
And
what
not-
about the other two ideas, I guess? So leave those alone as well? Public Works Operations Fund replacement and the Parks and Rec Equipment Fund replacement?
Again, and this
They're so
even goes for
small.
me back to the salt storage shed, and I know that
Mhm.
Kathleen has talked to Bill, and he thinks we can make it 3 years. I'm a little reluctant to continue going down the path of deferring things and deferring things and deferring things, so
Well, these last two,
I might,
are
sorry, go
not,
ahead.
they're not deferring though, are they?
Well, they're not getting us to the level we need to build for vehicle, truck replacements without having to borrow in the future. The idea is that we
keep building the fund. Yep.
begin to establish money in the budget every year so that when things need to be replaced, we don't need to borrow for them. So you certainly could argue that we could wait a little, for those two, we could wait a little further. Now, on the salt storage shed, that would be deferring that maintenance. So,
Mhm.
they're a little bit different than,
Well, it's really following the model that we do for fire equipment, which to me has been a success story.
Yeah.
yeah.
And in fact, it even proved itself this past year when we bought the ladder truck, and we actually had a fairly significant savings by paying cash.
Mhm.
So the wisdom is there. I'd personally love to see we have a policy like that for all of our public inventory and everything
Well-
else, but that's a long road down. But I hear what you're saying, it'd be foolish to not at least start down that road.
Let me just clarify, though. We pay, all this stuff, we pay cash anyway, so we would
Right.
get the same discount.
Right,
But the difference is whether we pay a 3%
right, right.
on the borrowing after the fact. But we'll write it,
Understand.
the vendors give us any cash
No, I
discount,
understand.
so.
We do, Director of Operations Bill Kernan did put together a plan this year of what we need to do like what we do with the fire trucks. And it's a pretty big ask. And so, and if we go back to the local option tax, I mean, that's where I would like to see tax dollars going towards staff and benefits, and maybe local option tax going towards
Hard tangible things.
equipment and investment. So I struggle a little bit with it just going into the general fund. I'd like to have a little bit.
There's really not a difference, though.
I know, that's
It's
what I
all
was
part of your
thinking too,
general
because
fund.
I know, there's a difference in my brain.
Yeah,
okay?
well, it's the way we would manage it. And I know that there was a lot of discussion from the crowd, and I think that's where we got this at the last town meeting about what would it save. I think that from a business perspective, unless rates really jump, the savings is on pulling the actual infrastructure work ahead, because the infrastructure costs are going up much greater than the bond rate charges. And so, doing things before the cost of materials go through the roof, the borrowing is taking our money out of use for a single piece of equipment to pay cash and save 3%, in my mind, is a poor use of those funds, because you could leverage those funds and use the funds to get actual needed work done on a bond at 3%, and you can borrow on that equipment for 3%. So until we have such a pile of money that we can do that
Yeah.
and pay cash for equipment, I think paying cash for equipment is a fruitless use. The fire equipment is a different thing, because of the way it's just kind of, it's not like our public works.
It's much long-term investment.
Yeah, well, it's,
Well, I
they
think,
bill and it
Yeah.
just seems different the way we do our fire.
Mhm. Yeah, no,
Kathleen, the tax rate comparison that you gave us
Mm-hmm.
does not include any of these changes.
Right.
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 So, I don't know.
I would love to
We're
get it
talking
under
about-
3 cents.
well,
You would love to get it under 3 cents?
I would.
looks to me if we get that 400,000, we take 400,000.
So can it be 299, or you want it to be?
I would just love to get it under 3 cents. I don't know if there's a way we can do, what does going to 400,000 get us to, Kathleen?
So that takes off about 0.6 of a cent, so it'd be at about 2.5.
How much?
2.5.
I mean, that's, for
Okay.
me, I'm just saying, my preference is, and then
You go
that
back
gets
to
us
that
down
other-
to
Which
a
one?
5-year.
This?
No, the one
Less
that
than
gives the
3 cents in
5-year
5 years.
It's
comparison.
been incredibly stable.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
costs have gone up, so.
And we're not using more than 1 year's, and we're doing that without using more than 1 year's
Yeah.
excess in the local option tax.
yeah, I think that if we articulate those policies, I think that will be helpful. If we say that, it's going to go into the general fund for the purpose of stabilizing our tax rate and being able to prioritize needed infrastructure projects, and that's the intent, and we're not going to exceed more than a year of revenue from the local option tax receipts, that it would be interesting to see how voters receive that.
one of the things that would be nice to make sure we articulate too is, isn't there some extra infrastructure work in our budget, which is why we're going there, and to be able to show that separately, so that, because in your thing about your thought process, I totally agree with your thought process. If we only approve it for a half, we got it, the next year, we're locked into a full, so why don't,
Right.
if we can't budget it this year for a full, why can't we budget it the following year? I got that. But then it's the same thing with, if we're pulling the 400,000, have we got the extra, significant amount of extra infrastructure work planned, or are we?
Well, we've moved forward the planning of a lot of projects to accelerate the implementation and match some and leverage some grant funds to implement projects.
Is that in the tune of 300-something thousand?
We have 2 culverts planned on Katy Road, work at the adaptive reuse of the buildings at the police station.
So are we back to looking at whether it's prudent to delay the library position? Is that what you're saying, in order to leverage?
No. I think if we agree that to take it to, with the, move in the proposed local option tax funds from 353,603 to 400,000, gets us down to, well, it takes 61 hundredths of a cent off from where we were at. I don't have that open, Kathleen. Do you?
You said, what, 2.5 cents?
From 3 and 14 hundredths cents. So you're going to get you down to 2.53, I think. 2.53 cents. And so I'm comfortable with that, given what Kathleen has shown us with how we've managed the last 5 years. And I feel like that's a reasonable ask of the voters, as long as we can articulate why and how we continue to manage it going forward. And if we can hit it with those 2 positions, then I don't see why we can't sustain those 2 positions. I would always be curious, could you hire someone at 28 hours and not have full-time benefits? And I don't know, with the current job market, the tough thing is then it locks us for a full year where we may not get them filled. I wish we could approve it and then try hiring at lesser and see what you get for a candidate pool. And if you don't get a quality candidate pool, then you advertise as a full-time 30-hour. I mean, I think as a business person, that's how I would do my business.
The only thing is, staff has recommended the 30-hour a week, assuming that we have enough work for that person to do, correct?
Point is to.
Right, and part of the 30-hour a week threshold was to recruit and retain. So there's nothing stopping us from recruiting at a lower level, below 30 hours a week, perhaps in the spring. And if we don't get any satisfactory applicants, we could go back out again.
Can you move someone without us, can we as a board approve, like if you hire someone in at 28 hours and then they show, so you aren't locked, and then they show that they are a really quality employee, can you promote them to a full-time position? And we've already approved a full-time position?
Approved a full-time position.
That's how I would hire, and, 'cause then we're not locked.
As long as, I do hear what you're saying. I understand from a business perspective 100% what you're saying, but I'm also trying to be, if staff is asking us for a position of certain number of hours, then they're indicating that they need that at that level.
That's what
And-
I thought. That was the minimum that
There's
you
really,
needed.
for all intents and purposes, there's no difference between 28 and 30 hours,
Yeah.
generally.
Other than we're not paying benefits,
Yeah.
which,
It's a sizable amount.
It's
Yeah.
a lot, But so, anyway, so, the other thing it would do is if it worked, it would allow you to move another part-timer to a lot more hours. I mean, you can have the same funds for personnel, but distribute them differently. I'm agreeing with supporting this. I'm just saying there are ways that, as a town staff, we could continue to work and try to accomplish more with the same amount.
I guess I just don't want.
Private business does it every day.
Yes, I recognize that, and just want to support staff at the same time
Yeah.
that we're fiscally responsible, I guess. I want to,
And I'm supporting them, I mean, yeah.
So for the purposes of the budget, you're supporting putting it in
I
as
am.
proposed, right?
I'm
Okay.
just throwing out there that
Right.
my recommendation to the staff would be,
Mhm.
take those funds and see if you can stretch them further.
Mhm.
This does go back to the discussion earlier, though, of coming with a way so that we get, which could conceivably partially fund this position, some of the we have to administer a grant.
Which is coming forward to us.
Yes.
They will be coming forward. They need to study and make a recommendation, but
Yes.
I think it came up in the Personnel Committee meeting that it takes a significant amount of time, and there ought to be an appropriate charge for administering grants.
And I suspect that significant amount of time is fairly well quantified,
Mhm.
which is good. Yeah.
Okay.
so is the recommendation that we not do any of the proposed reductions, but rather increase the cross-street bridge fund to offset?
The only two reductions that I would challenge is this, do we really think that it's a priority to buy our vehicles cash? And if we do, then I'm okay with it. But
So you would take those out?
with the rates staying low, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know where the rates are going. And do you know traditionally, Kathleen, even back when rates were higher, were municipal bonds always, municipal borrowing rates always significantly lower?
Yeah.
I mean, if municipal rates are always low, the return on that money is going to be less than 3%. Because we're going to be just banking that money for a number of years.
So that we get rid of those two and we go for the 400,000, we're right at 2.5 cents. Just net, very close. Mhm.
I want to be clear what we're getting rid of and what we're keeping. So,
The borrow for replacement of car and borrow for replacement of the truck. Those two.
Keeping positions
right, okay.
as is.
And then we are bumping this to 400.
Okay.
Sounds simple.
All right.
Kathleen, does that work for you?
Yeah. So that gives you a general fund budget of $11,155,400 and an amount to be raised of $7,836,854. With taking the $5,000 and $7,000 out. Those are the only changes to the general fund budget.
Okay.
Any final questions on the board?
No question.
Comments?
Once again, great work. Yeah,
Mhm.
thanks. I mean, I kept waiting for this day. I mean, it seems like every year it's pulled out some really interesting solutions, and eventually this is going to happen, and it's still, it's reasonable considering the level of service. It's a great job. Thank you. And all the staff.
Ann?
I just have a question about your discussion earlier in terms of looking at local option tax going, say, directly into the general fund. And I certainly would question that only because the way the taxes are gained, one through property tax, one through the local option tax. For the voters, it really is the same thing. Any budget you bring to the voters and you want to draw money either from excess in the general fund or excess in the local option tax fund, you would then be explaining to them why you're bringing it over, and they're gonna have to approve it anyway, one way or the other. To me, it seems a little more messy to have it go into the general fund. If it's going into the local option fund tax, the voters voted for, and it's real clear that you wanna tell the voters, like, every year when we do the budget, we're gonna be looking at money to draw this to stabilize taxes or to fund capital expenditure.
Yeah.
But to just start taking it and putting it in the general fund, as a taxpayer, I would question that more. I would feel more uncomfortable with that. So I'm just gonna put that out there now. The voters have to approve whatever fund you're taking it from anyway.
Yeah, I think you misunderstood my, I'm not going to take, the money is in a separate account. It has to be accounted for separately. But to utilize it in the excess in balancing our general fund budget and being able to, without having to every year have a separate item about local option tax discussion, that would be
Just that you're going to draw
we will be drawing some from that to help stabilize.
into
Yeah.
the general fund.
Need to kind of think through the presentation for town meeting, and I love that you just question it, because I need to clarify that, yeah. No, it'd be something that need to clarify, make sure everybody understands how we're managing it, because that is important.
Well, in
Yes,
some
I was
respects, that
definitely
chart
hearing
that
that.
Kathleen just had, that helps to place that forward that way.
This one?
It shows the differentiation. Or some variation of that. But fundamentally, I agree with where you go. Mhm.
Right.
Would you be changing the restrictions? Is that better?
Right, yeah,
Changing restrictions rather than?
Yeah.
yeah. It's kind of the agreement with the taxpayers, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah. No, I'm working on the presentation for the town meeting. Thank you.
Trying it out.
How's that working for you?
Yeah, we're not there yet. Got a few more weeks.
So do you,
Okay, so are there any other questions? If not,
do you need the motion?
the pleasure of the board, yeah.
So I move that we finalize the FY '20 general fund budget for presentation to the voters at town meeting on Monday, March 4th.
With the numbers
With
that
the number.
Kathleen just read us?
Yes, the numbers.
Okay. Any questions on those? So what we did was we took the changes that we had made from the hearing last week, and we made 2 more reductions from the budget, and are drawing a greater amount from the local option tax to bring us down to about a 2.5 cent tax rate increase. Is that what we're all understanding?
That's what we all understand.
All right, so voting on that, bringing that to the town meeting for the voters' approval. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Next is to finalize the 2019 town meeting warning.
There we go. So here is a draft of the town meeting warning, version number 10. It looks like we'll be having version number 11 as we seek to change the wording slightly of article number 2, which currently says to apply $353,603 from the Cross Street Bridge Fund Reserve to offset increase spending for capital improvements in the FY '20 general fund. I'll work with council to reword that to reflect the $400,000 for capital spending and stabilize the tax rate, something to that effect.
And don't we have the plastic bag ban?
Yep, that is included.
It is, okay.
Yep.
Number 11.
Yep, Article number 11.
Okay, I see it now, okay.
So I removed 2 articles that did not receive the signatures or petitions were not received for the articles for the CVOEO and the Neighbor Works of Rutland, of Western Vermont.
Okay. All right, so we just need a motion to finalize it with the proposed amendment?
Mhm. With the comment that Article 3, the equipment borrowing number, we do have some money in reserve, and it's being appropriated this year that we could reduce the dump trunk snowplow equipment note by somewhat significantly, and I'd like to make that proposal. So they have a presentation on that. So these are the 2 items in your budget, line item 702. There's another line item further in the budget, 850, I think, that's winter highway maintenance. We have a total of $164,251 appropriated for equipment fund replacement for the highway department. The debt service that we are servicing that we need to deduct from that is $36,435. So leaving us $127,816 that's included in our FY '20 budget in excess of debt service. So what I'd like to do is take that amount, $127,816, combine it with money that we have earmarked from the water and sewer account, $48,714, to offset the purchase of the new plow truck at $235,000 for a net to be borrowed of $58,470.
See, this is how that set aside works?
Yep. So what we did in the budget process is rather than reducing the amount, knowing that we need to grow the amount that we set aside each year for replacement of vehicles, rather than replace it to meet just the debt service, we level funded it, and that's what's creating this amount.
Okay.
So we actually delayed our replacement schedule a little bit, which allowed us to get ahead.
Yep.
Did that back when I was on the
Mm-hmm.
committee, I think.
So I will also be, if you're agreeable to that approach, I will be fine-tuning the wording of that article to reflect that change.
Are there any other questions on this? So Kathleen's got 2 amendments that she's making to what is in our packet. If that's the pleasure of the board, I would seek a motion to support it with those amendments.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to finalize the 2019 town meeting warning for publication with the amendments to Article 2 and to Article 3 as just presented by Town Manager Kathleen Ramsey.
Second.
Oh,
Moved and seconded. Are there any other comments, questions? Okay, hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, check warrants. Heather, is that you tonight?
Yes, that's me. I'd like to make a motion to approve total expenditures in the amount of $300,498.72, consisting of $193,601.48 for accounts payable and $106,897.24 for payroll for the period of January 16, 2019 to January 22nd, 2019.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Bless you.
Okay, next is town manager's report.
At the last meeting, you asked me to prepare a letter to our congressional delegation regarding the longest federal shutdown in U.S. history, and that is in your packet. I didn't write this till Friday in hopes that it would have been resolved, but there it is.
Thank you. Ongoing, why not? Time to send it through.
Okay. So it's a pleasure to the board to
Should
sign
we-
the letter.
Should we pleasure the board on this?
So I'll make a motion to sign the letter to Vermont's congressional representatives requesting their support for ending the partial shutdown of the federal government as soon as possible.
Second?
Moved and seconded by Nick. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Board member concerns. Laura?
In your packet is a rough draft of a town meeting poll for you to consider for hopefully finalization by mid-February when early voting starts. So maybe that'll give us, our next meeting, a chance to finalize any questions that you thought you might like to see changed or added to that. Basically, it follows the same format as last year, with the addition of a few items that were recommended out of the poll from last year. So if you look at the front, for example, at the top where we look at the demographics, and we ask how long you've been a resident, you know, if you pay property taxes, your age range, indicate how you identify your gender, and then added new is, do you identify as a person of color, yes or no, and do you experience Middlebury to be welcoming and inclusive, and have you experienced any hate speech in Middlebury? And that's just to give us an indication of an issue that seems to be on the minds of some of our residents. So that's new. The rest of the first page is what you've seen last year, and mostly it's to inform residents, again, of the services that we have available, and just to trend how satisfied they are with what we provide as a local government. If you go to the second page, you'll see that under policy, we have an opportunity to ask whether people strongly agree or disagree on a number of things. So last year, somebody had recommended that we ask about assuming responsibility for the teen center, and I haven't heard anything lately. I'm not advocating for this necessarily. It was just something that I got reminded of when I went over the notes from last year, and I don't know that we need that this year, so maybe just think about that. The next one, incentivize building construction that has solar access, roof-oriented for panels. That was another suggestion. So use a portion of the local option tax surplus to pay for vehicles in order to avoid loans. That was out of the discussion we had last year. Maybe we don't want that after the discussion we just had tonight. So I'm not wed to any of these under policy, and I want to think about them myself too, you know, to see if we have the right ones. And it's okay that we have none actually listed there, and that people just have the opportunity to share whatever comments they want to. It's an anecdotal tool that gives us some useful information about how our town meeting worked, how our committees are working, how our departments are working. So that's the primary value of the town meeting poll.
Yes, sir, Emily Poole.
That's good.
That was one thing I just wanted to bring to your attention, and also to thank, I'm sure others of you will mention it too, thank our Public Works for keeping on top of this incredible snowstorm and clearing roads and sidewalks. It's been just an amazing witness, to see them tackle that, and I really appreciate that, as well as all the contractors out there that are responding to heat and plumbing concerns in not only our public buildings, but of course, our businesses and residences. So thank you. Thank you for your coverage, and also our emergency responders for always being on the ready, given whatever extreme weather we have. Really appreciate them. That's it.
Farhad?
I'm good, thanks.
Nick?
I was going to echo Laura's comments about the Public Works. It's what North Country crews do and do really well, and they showed they were top-notch, excellent work, so thanks. I was wondering in past years, we've had a time or two when the our state delegates come. Usually we shift to a Monday meeting. I thought that'd be kind of nice to do that again, hear what's important to them, and let them hear what's important to us. So if that's something.
So would you like to do that before town meeting, at one of your meetings in February?
Oh, either that or right after. I mean, it's I'm not really biased one way or another, so if it works out before, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm not sure when we did it last year.
Well, it's been a while since we've done it.
Oh,
Was it last year or 2 years ago?
I thought we did it last year.
Oh, we
I don't remember.
We did have them in about the VLCT legislative
Right, that's
platform
what it was
in
last
the
year.
summer.
I remember Chris Bray being here. That's what it was.
Okay, it was when they were out of session, though.
Right.
Laura?
Laura?
Heather?
She's over there. I'm good. Everybody said enough already about Public Works. I would just say that, tell Bill I saw the hot box go down the road with steam coming out of the other day, and I was really tempted to turn around and ask him how it was working. So, anyway.
On our tour, Farhad and Lindsay and I saw the hot box, and to rave reviews.
Good.
Really?
I've seen a new plow go up and down the street a couple of times, and it looks like it's doing a fantastic job, doing a sidewalk plow, so.
Did you
Is
have a
that the-
tour of building?
Is
Yeah,
that the tool, yeah, so it's going up and down the road now? Good.
Oh, yeah.
Last I talked to him, he said he was still waiting on some attachments.
Both with the plow
I
and
loaned
the
him,
blower.
I loaned him a
In fact, they went-
plow.
You guys
Okay.
talked
Yeah.
Came down with the blower today.
Exactly what
Good.
you talked
Excellent,
about.
nice work.
Good.
Good.
Okay. Heather, could you help me go into, we
Sure.
do have a need for a review of
Yes.
contract here, so we need an executive session.
In accordance with Vermont's open meeting law requirements, I move that the board find that premature general knowledge of the consideration of contracts would clearly place the select board at a substantial disadvantage because the select board risks disclosing its litigation strategy if it discusses the contracts in public.
Second?
Moved and seconded, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
I further move that the board enter into executive session to discuss contracts and under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A1 of the Vermont statutes.
Moved and seconded, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, those opposed? All right, so we're going to move into executive session at 8:35.